All right, I want to bring in now Martin Kingston. He speaks to us in his capacity as the Vice President of Business Unity South Africa. Martin, thanks very much indeed for joining us. So I see there was a clear message at your briefing today. The response by the state was lackluster and inadequate. If business is still calling for a 24-hour curfew, presumably you are not convinced that the increase in army presence is good enough.
Well, good evening, Devan. In fact, the increase in the army presence has taken place during and subsequent to our statement being made. The issue that we wanted to emphasize is that we need to secure property and we need to protect people at all costs. And to do that, we believe that there needs to be very significant restrictions and limitations on the movement of people. Obviously, we need to ensure that essential goods and services can indeed be transported, as we saw during lockdown level 5 last year. But we need absolutely now to protect lives and livelihoods. And we were concerned at the speed with which we were able to see that mobilization taking place. As we know, that's now increased significantly over the past 24 hours.
Martin, so I would imagine the main purpose of that curfew and the increased presence in the army was really for business to restock safely, to repair, to start activity again. The question is, where should the heavy presence be? I mean, what are the key hotspots in order to get business activity up again?
Well, as you know, there have been many businesses that have been attacked, destroyed over the past several days. Unfortunately, in those cases, there's nothing that can be done. But for those that are still capable of operating, we need to ensure in key areas of the economy, be it manufacturing, be it the agro-industry, foodstuffs, be it the transportation of chemicals, and critically important in the context of our healthcare system, the transportation of medical supplies, that can now happen without people having to fear for either their lives or indeed for the security of their assets. We believe that the significance of a presence on the ground, feet on the ground, be it the police, be it the military, or indeed other forms of security apparatus that is legal and overseen by the state, is the best way of ensuring that we can reactivate some elements of the economy as quickly as possible. We know that certainly in KZN, very significant aspects of the supply chain have been broken or certainly ruptured, and they need to be reassembled as quickly as practically possible in very difficult circumstances. The other issue I'd like to emphasize is, of course, in KZN, we've effectively had to suspend the vaccination rollout program during the third wave, and we've seen a number of events of mass gatherings, if that's what they can be characterized now, which are super spreading events, even more critical in terms of further imposing stresses on the healthcare system, and indeed risking not only the lives of the perpetrators, but the lives of those that they've come into contact, innocent civilians, in the process of what we've seen in terms of the riots and the looting.
You've also started talking about government support with your stakeholders at NEDLAC. I mean, a fund of sorts, you know, for these affected businesses. How would this exactly work? And my question is, does government have the fiscal space for such type of support for affected businesses?
Well, Devan, that's a very good question. We had an extensive engagement at NEDLAC yesterday. We're re-engaging again tomorrow on the modalities of all forms of intervention. One form of intervention, exactly as you've said, is appropriate relief for the individuals and businesses that have been impacted by what we've seen over the past week. We do know, again, as you've alluded to, that there's a restricted fiscal space. There's going to have to be, yet again, a reprioritization of expenditure to ensure that those who've been most affected can have some level of relief. It's actually happening concurrently with the need to reactivate UIF TERS as a result of lockdown level 4. This is going to be much more significant. We've been asked to quantify the economic damage. It's actually impossible so to do at the moment. Our own view is that it's going to take probably 2 years or longer to put the economy back certainly in KZN and parts of Gauteng, as to where it was. There's been a total erosion, obviously, of investor confidence domestically and internationally. And during that time, we're going to have to find the wherewithal to be able to support the economy at large and the individuals and businesses concerned. And our view, and indeed I have to say it is Labour that tabled this initiative, but we support it, is that we do need to create a fund, probably along the lines of the Solidarity Fund or the GBV Fund, that is independent from government, independent from other stakeholders, appropriately administered, which is capable of acting with agility in providing the assistance required. Even those who are insured, for example, by Sasria, we have to assume that it's going to take an extended period of time for them to submit their claims and receive compensation. We can't afford that in the current circumstances as a country, particularly those who've been most significantly affected.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because this insurance payout to businesses, I suppose, is a very, very vital link to get businesses and the economy back in order. I'm assuming that you're not expecting those payouts to be, streaming out anytime soon. That will take time, wouldn't it? What impact do you think that will have on recovery?
Well, I think it's a very significant problem. We saw the same thing when we started UIF TERS in terms of COVID last year, which was that the payout, the administration, the mechanics of the process took far longer than was possible or appropriate in the circumstances in which we found ourselves. The same applies here. I mean, I'm not suggesting for one moment that the insurers won't honour their obligations, but they need to process the claims. The claims actually need to be submitted in the first instance. We have no idea as to the quantity of those claims, either in terms of the number of claims or the quantum of money that is being sought. But even on the basis that both can be, in fact, addressed, it won't happen in the immediate short term. And it's in the immediate short term that we need to give the individuals, the businesses concerned, the relief. And it's not just the businesses, of course, that we've seen that have been looted and burned down. There's, again, a whole host of ancillary businesses around them, their own supply chains that feed into them or that actually rely upon goods and services from those businesses that have been impacted or indeed destroyed as a consequence of the events of the last week.
Martin, I've got to ask you, business is all about asserting what the future holds. It's about prediction. It's about certainty. Surely in your conversations over the dreadful events over the past few days, you would search for the source of this looting. Where is this coming from in terms of its instigation? How do you digest this? What type of conversations are you having around where this is coming from?
Well, we are all trying to pool intelligence. It's not just the intelligence services, I mean business as well, so that we can put that at the disposal of the state, so that those who are the perpetrators can be indeed held to account, and held to account they must be as quickly, but indeed as transparently as possible under the circumstances. I hear that one potential suspect has already been arrested, but it's woefully inadequate under the circumstances. And whilst we're in this state of affairs, those who are providing the capital, those who are committed to the future of the country, both domestically and internationally, are going to actually sit on the sidelines until they're assured of the fact that as a country we've taken control of the situation, that we have addressed those circumstances that gave rise to this particularly appalling set of circumstances, which has affected both those who've lost their lives, but a huge number of people who have been innocent victims. Either they've been injured or they've lost their livelihoods. And we're talking about tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people who've lost their livelihoods, tens of thousands of businesses that have been affected. And unfortunately, it's going to put on hold much of the recovery plans that we were starting to implement, which is not just hugely problematic in its own right, because that was the only way that we were going to, and we will be able to address the inequality, the unemployment and the poverty that exists in the country. But it actually has set us back, I would argue, for an extended period of time until we're able to prove that we have dealt with both the cause of the situation and, as I said, held the perpetrators to account.
You don't want this to happen again, so as I let you go, have you spoken about who's behind this, Martin?
No, we actually don't know. We are no better informed than the public at large. We're deeply concerned that there may be sort of political machinations, but we will assume and hope that the prosecuting authorities will address these matters as a matter of urgency. And obviously, the President and government has it as their number one priority. We will give them all of the assistance and support that we possibly can, as you say, not just to bring those who are accountable to book, but also to take such precautions as we can as a country to ensure that we never see a repeat of what has transpired.
All right, Martin Kingston speaking to us in his capacity as the Business Unity South Africa Vice President. Thanks very much indeed for your time.